Hi, and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Legato Fire podcast on the CAFMA Connect. With me today is our special guest, Police Chief, my mistake, Police Chief Bob Ticer. He'd be very happy if he's a fire chief, but he's in law enforcement, and we respect that greatly. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, and you know, when folks in the community look at the Legato Fire, a lot of times they think fire department. They think just big red trucks, lots of flames, there we are. But the reality is your police officers and YCSO integrating with Prescott Valley PD played an integral part in that entire incident. And so I wanted to talk to you about that so that our community and our viewers or listeners, the 10s or 11 of them that we have, could hear more about what the police officers did on the Legato Fire, and then the importance of the relationship between your agency and our agency in the field.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And let's start with the relationship part first. The relationship between CAFMA and PVPD didn't just start that night, that early morning. No. It's been ongoing for decades.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And getting stronger and stronger all the time. Where police and fire, both are first responders, both are public safety. There's obviously difference in jobs.
Correct.
And really what we saw at Legato is both fire and police working together to complement each other, to look out for each other so they could each do each other's jobs. And when I say that, you know, I know you had the data, but I do feel like a fire chief at times now, right, after what I've learned over this incident, this massive fire, the biggest in Yavapai County history. This is no joke. This is a big deal. Let's just say, correct me if I miscalculate, but 12 fire trucks around that facility spraying water. 14. I knew it was close.
Yep.
12 or 14. And while you're all doing that, we know what you're doing. You're protecting additional structures and making sure that fire is getting put out. Our job at that time is to make sure you have a safe environment outside to be able to do that, blocking roads off, bringing volunteers in to shut intersections down so you could effectively do your jobs. But also, you're also looking out for the police officers. And Prescott Valley police officers, Yavapai County Sheriff's deputies were actively going door to door and getting people out of their apartments due east of that fire. Very close proximity.
Yes.
I mean, really one street, and then there was structures with people in it.
Right, and not a wide street.
Not a wide street, a very small street. But our officers were able to feel comfortable doing that because they were in absolute communications with the firefighter commanders out there to say, yeah, it's safe to be here, but you need to move people out, and this is what you need to do. So we were relying on you to help us know where we could go unsafe so we could evacuate people so your folks didn't have to worry about it. They could focus on the fire. And that's really how we work together.
Absolutely, and the efficiency of your officers to move through homestead apartments at 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up residents to get them out of harm's way. Thankfully, we know in the end we were able to keep the fire and away from homestead enough where there was only minimal damage from heat, but we didn't have fire spread. Thankfully, the winds were in our favor, apparatus were placed properly, but your officers were able to navigate an alternate route for people to evacuate homestead safely. They were able to set up and establish a shelter for people to go to. They worked with emergency management to make sure that the Red Cross or whoever needed to be activated for the shelter were there. Those were all things that law enforcement did. That wasn't the fire department that did that. And I think the other thing that helped that was, and I've given you props publicly for this multiple times, and I'm going to say it on the podcast again, the first time in my 31 years in emergency services I've ever had a police chief come, get into the command vehicle, and immediately integrate and start working directly with us in a unified command structure. And that's how we knew as the fire department that your officers were able to get a hold of the school district and get everything taken care of for folks who were evacuating homestead. And also then you got Findlay Toyota Center opened for us. As people started to arrive for work in the early morning hours, unfortunately to find that their jobs didn't exist anymore, we had a number of folks overcome with emotion and start getting a little too close to the fire scene. And we were able to look directly to you and say, hey, can you call PD over to this location to move people back?
Right. I mean, that was, when I got that call in the morning, just like others, we knew this is a major deal. And as I was approaching the scene, frankly, I was asking, where's Chief Freitag at? Oh, he's over there in that command. Okay. And I knew directly to go there. And then that's when we started working together. And that's just what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
To me, it's not a hard decision. And just like it wouldn't be for you, we work together. Right. We know each other. We break bread together.
Yes, we do.
And that's super important. We have dual respect for each other's agencies. But when we get together like that in an incident, there's manuals all over the place, right, that says go through all that. Frankly, when there's an incident like that, you don't pull out the manual.
Correct.
It's on the shelf. It is. It really is. Not to say that we shouldn't do that, but it just doesn't happen that way.
Right.
What happens in an incident like that is you get the chiefs together, you get a battalion chief, a police lieutenant together, and we continually bounce conversation off each other. Have you thought about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about that? And for 4 or 5 hours, that's what we did.
Absolutely.
We're like, do we have shelter? Let me call HUSD and find out. Do we have water pressure? Make sure you guys got enough water. You're on a phone call with the town manager who's on the same, who's calling me back. And so everybody was just coming together as a team. And frankly, I don't think any of us missed much because of the bouncing of ideas and conversation back and forth. And really, that's not in a manual. That's just experience and what people do to make sure this is safe.
Well, and that's building those relationships before the incident. And as you said, we go to dinner together sometimes, and we get together with the sheriff and Amy Bonney with Prescott PD and Chuck Wynn with Chino PD, and then we get together with Holger Dura from Prescott Fire. And we just go out and we continue to build the relationships, build the network so that it's a smooth integration when the emergency happens, because we know whatever the emergency is, we are going to be working closely together. And it's not if, or I mean, it's not when, it's not if, it's when.
Right. It's going to happen again someday.
I'll get my thoughts together. Right. Yeah. I'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
The relationships that we build, even with, and in the week that followed that, right? Because once, the fire's out, now the fire investigation begins, and we have arson investigators, you have detectives. The ATF came in with their special response unit, national response team. And I have to say, in regard to the ATF, I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised at how communicative they were during that process and how inclusive they were, both with police and fire all working jointly together.
Yeah, that was a extremely impressive operation. And I can tell you, and to our viewers out there, the dozen or so that you said that are watching this podcast, maybe if you can get a few more, that'd be good. Get a couple dozen.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That'd be awesome. This is as simple as it was. In those conversations, we all knew, you knew, I knew, others knew that this is more than likely an arson. And this is going to be an overwhelming investigation based on the structure and how big this fire was. So we knew we needed to call ATF for some assistance. So we had several of us working on that, and we had a couple ATF agents out of the Phoenix division up here in Prescott Valley by mid-morning. And when I met with those agents, they quickly realized this was a huge incident. And so in conversation with those two agents, I said, what can you do to help us with this? And they said, well, it looks like you're going to need a national response team. I'm like, well, okay, what is that? And they said, well, within 24 hours, we could get a couple dozen ATF agents, chemists, structural engineers, all these people with huge amounts of expertise on the ground here in less than 24 hours to help conduct this investigation and support you. And I said, how do we do that? And they said, you just need to ask. And I said, okay, I'm asking. They said, you got it. And in less than 24, there wasn't, I didn't even sign anything.
No,
there was no
amazing
paperwork. They said, yes, we'll do that. And in less than 24 hours, we had some very serious, experienced people on the ground to help us find the cause and proximity of that fire.
And the great thing is, and again, I don't know that the public connects the two, but you have the initial fire and the fire investigation, which the fire department remains part of the investigation. But ultimately, we suspected at the time that this was an arson fire. And so there's that police component that comes in then, because now we're starting to transition over to more of a law enforcement issue where you're taking the lead. And I think the transition, at least from my perspective, went smoothly, and in large part because of the communication between all parties, the daily briefings that we would have. working everybody in the same room. So you didn't have fire in one room, federal in another, and law enforcement in another. Everybody was in one room. Everybody had a voice. Everybody had a seat. And it just seemed to work and flow very well. It
did. It was, and what I like is there was not a lot of, this is my information, I'm not going to share it. Obviously, there's some confidential criminal investigations that have to be confidential. But most of the stuff we do, we can share. And that's what happened in the days to follow. I remember that initial meeting we brought in some of the elected officials.
Yes.
And we briefed them on what was going on. You and I did, and our teams together in the same room. And then that transitioned out to daily meetings with Fire Command, Police Command, and also representatives from the construction business and the victims of the fire, the Fanes.
Right.
And we started those daily briefings, and we had incidents, what do you call them? You guys are really good at the incident command thing.
We had incident action plans, IAPs,
those.
for each day.
We always rely on you for that because you do such a wonderful job at that. We know that. We had those each day. You had a command officer doing that, and we stayed on task. And then we knew that there was, from the police, we knew, talking to you, that there was going to be hot spots, and you all needed to pay attention to that ground zero there for several days.
7 days.
7 days. And
7 days we had people on scene.
We needed to help you with that, and then we also needed to make sure we had security in those areas too. So we just did all that together, and it was seamless.
Well, and having that crew on scene for those 7 days really helped with the security side of it as well, because overnight, obviously officers are patrolling around with our crews on scene as people would start trying to walk in to the scene. Or I was there one day, a gentleman came in, and apparently the yellow caution tape simply means slow down and
or it
duck.
applies to everybody else but that person.
Right. And I just want to go in and see this. Well, this is a collapse zone.
Right.
It's a crime scene and a collapse zone.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Right.
So you can't be in here right now. But and the community support for our folks in those days with, I know we got coffee from Quick Trip. Thank you so much for coordinating that, because we needed it badly. And they donated coffee, and we had Rosa's deliver some pizzas, and so many other vendors around there make sure that our folks had what they needed to operate on that scene and still remain hydrated and functioning and fed. And that was vitally important. So there was a law enforcement component, there was a fire department component, there's a community component, lost jobs, people supporting the folks who lost positions. And then you mentioned earlier, and I do need to invite Gilbert on, because the relationship him and I had allowed me to give him a call at 1:30, 1:40 in the morning, and he was willing to take that call, especially when he saw my name and he looked out his back window and saw the fire.
Right.
It's like, oh, what do you need? And the work that he did in contacting the water department, getting everything together, was vital in ensuring that fire didn't spread to other buildings and that we minimized damage, because we never once lost water pressure.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It was a complete team effort. And what I appreciated with him, and I'm sure probably on your side, is the town manager reports to elected officials. And I know he was doing that. He was briefing them and getting them information they needed. I did not have, my phone wasn't ringing from other than police and fire, so that we could focus on our job. And that's because the town manager was taking care of the elected officials on his end and keeping them abreast. And I know you had others that were helping out in that area too. And that's so important when we have critical incidents, is that we can focus on our jobs without additional calls coming in and distractions. Not that those aren't important calls. He just did a wonderful job at that, and I appreciated that.
Well, and the other thing we did was try to get good information out to the community, and that was made possible by not a joint information center, but joint information. Right. So Kathy, our wonderful producer sitting over there.
Yes, sir.
She's right over there.
We're working with Lieutenant Kaufman from PVPD and making sure that there were coordinated efforts in getting information out. And sometimes that can be difficult. There's police section, there's fire section, but they worked very well together.
Right. If you have a PIO in the police department and PIO in the fire department, they're in different locations. One's going to put information out, and others going to put information out on the other side that may not be exactly accurate.
Right.
It's just different. So when you have them together, which we did that day in a command post for multiple days, working together, so when they put a press release out or they release information, they did it together, so we're then on the same page. 2 logos, fire and police together, and the same message going out, because that message was super important to the community, for especially for traffic and safety in those areas, but also the stress that goes along with an incident like this. And now we're moving into looking for a suspect. And so how do we manage that with communicating to the public? And so that really took us into some of the next steps with ATF and with Silent Witness helping us out on releasing strategic information on a person of interest that we were looking for. That later turned to a suspect that we're still looking for.
Right. And so the update on the investigation is still in process. Right. From my perspective, not being law enforcement, and the photos that were shared as part of the investigation, it's really hard to track down someone when the description is they're dressed in all black with a black mask and black glasses and a black hoodie and black gloves and black boots.
Right.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We know they're tall, seem to be athletic, and potentially have larger feet. And I got to tell you, after that, because you can't profile people.
Right.
There are a lot of younger, thinner, taller, athletic people with large feet walking around this community.
Right. It's like if you're looking to buy a Corvette, and then you decide you want to buy a Corvette. I don't know. You're getting up in that age where you might want to get a Corvette someday.
No, I think I'm sticking with my Jeeps and my trucks.
All right, still in the Jeep thing. But let's say you want to get a Corvette.
Okay.
And you made that decision. You would leave this building and walk out. Everywhere you look, you'd see a Corvette.
Oh yeah.
But the day before, you didn't see any Corvettes.
No.
I forgot what they call that, but that's kind of what your experience is. And we got a lot of that from the community. People calling in and saying, "This person I know looks like this person," or "I saw this person over here." And so we were overwhelmed with community information coming to us on tips, which is awesome, because that shows that our community is really in touch and really wants to solve this crime. And we appreciate that. And we hope the community will continue to do that. I'm being reminded by our detectives that we're still early in this major investigation. We're hoping for that little break, that little tip. That may come from within the organization in the work that we're doing. It might just come from a neighbor or a business owner or a relative, somebody that knows this suspect that committed this heinous crime. And that's we continue to ask the community for that. So we're not giving up on it. We're still full tilt on this.
And that's asking the community to remain vigilant. If you see something, say something, make the call. I know at one point during that week process that we were in, where we had the PIOs working, Kathy had to step away for a bit. And so I happened to be in a meeting with one of our younger firefighters named Ryan Moore, who's getting promoted to engineer. And I said, "Hey, didn't you go to PIO training?" He said, "Yep, tag, you're it."
Exactly.
And we brought him in, and he did a great job as well, working directly with the police department. And he learned a lot from that experience, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that Ryan was part of it. And you're right. We've got to remain vigilant. We have to remain working together, continue that process. But I think the message we really, from the fire department, wanted to get across to the community is the great relationship we have with Prescott Valley PD, YCSO, all of law enforcement in the field. It's an amazing relationship we have in the community, and that's for the benefit of the community, as well as the benefit of each other, because the firefighters are trying to protect law enforcement in some situations. In other cases, the law enforcement's absolutely providing that protection to fire. And as a matter of fact, right now, we know that you still have an increased police presence on some of the active fire calls or alarm soundings that we go on as a result of this incident until we can find the suspect. And I think that speaks volumes for the relationship we continue to have in the field.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the relationship we have, police, fire, police and police, fire and fire, if I can go to practicing fire chief world for a second.
Sure.
What I appreciate that you have in Arizona, and that's throughout the entire state of Arizona, and also here is this automated aid you have.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably talked about it somewhere on the previous fires, but you don't have to go through all these process and bureaucracy to get an engine company out of neighboring jurisdiction. They're just here.
Right.
Because that's how automated this is. Your dispatch center is moving those, and I know you don't have 14 trucks here. do you?
We had 13 on the scene. We have 15 total with
Right.
us and Prescott.
Right.
And 13 of those apparatus were on that scene that night.
And then another one was from, was it Cottonwood?
Cottonwood.
Another
Cottonwood was on the scene.
ladder truck, right?
Right.
So that doesn't just happen in the moment. That's automated aid. So same thing with police. Our state is set up that every police officer in the state, whether you're a DPS officer or a city police officer or a deputy sheriff, those officers and deputies and troopers, they all have full jurisdiction in the entire state of Arizona. There's no jurisdictional beef. So like if you go to another state, there's these jurisdictional issues where sometimes folks stop at those jurisdictional lines from police or fire and they don't move back and forth. We don't have that here. And on top of that, we have the relationship. So I didn't have to call the sheriff's office. They're just coming.
Right.
They hear it and they're coming. Chino Valley, same thing. DPS, same thing. Prescott Fire, Cottonwood Fire, CAFMA, we all just come together. And I think that's so important for our community to know, our region to know that
Right.
when there is an incident, whether it's a small traffic crash on a jurisdictional line or a major fire like this, everybody's coming.
Absolutely.
Everybody's coming, and that's the only mission is to go there and protect life and property. And we do it together.
In some cases, all we have to do is ask, and that's part of the countywide mutual aid plan that we have, as well as the statewide mutual aid plan. Both of those were activated that night of the fire. And I presented that to the Board of Supervisors this morning, Yavapai County, as part of talking about our ambulance service that we'll get into it on another podcast. But I wanted them to understand as county supervisors, here's how your county comes together. Here's how these plans work. And it doesn't matter what community you're in Yavapai County, you make the call, other agencies are going to send resources.
Exactly.
Because it's about the community and the service that we can provide to the community, even if it's not necessarily our home community.
Yeah, and that's that. Just like with you getting backfilled with fire companies from other jurisdictions helping you out, we have the same thing in police, where we are pretty low staffing at 2 a.m. compared to how many we have out there during the daytime. Minimum staffing in there. There's still calls for service going on in the town.
Right.
One of our officers was tied up on a felony arrest at the time of the fire, so that he was busy with that. Those calls don't stop, but we have other agencies, Prescott PD Sheriff, that come in behind us and help backfill some calls while we're doing that, and we do the same thing for them. So that happens all the time, and it's just so simple up here.
Yeah. It's a
not even
great
an issue.
system.
Yeah.
And not every state has a system like this. And so Arizona is a state that is somewhat unique in that regard, but it's all about providing service to the community and ensuring community safety.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the criminal investigation end of it. Once we really started working on trying to identify the suspect, we had investigators from the county attorney's office. We had PANT detectives, narcotics detectives that moved away from their narcotics enforcement to working towards a criminal investigation function. We had sheriff deputies. We had ATF agents all going door to door and helping us as an agency. And nobody's coming to me saying, are you going to pay our overtime or can you sign this bill? That doesn't happen at all. Not at all.
No.
It's just, hey, sheriff called me at 8 that morning. He called me. I didn't call him. Bob, what do you need? I'm like, can we get some more of your narcotics officers to help us with? Absolutely. What else you need? Yeah. That's a relationship we have in Yavapai County.
Yeah, and Sheriff Rhodes is a great resource for all of us, whether it's law enforcement or fire. Him and his deputies are always willing to step up and step in and help out, and they've just been a great resource and a great partner for us.
For sure.
With that, anything else you'd like to share on the investigation or the suspect that you think the public should know?
We're going to be putting out some more information here pretty soon
to
freshen this up for the public, because right now we put a lot of information out. We did some press conferences, and then we put the reward money out there from the ATF and Silent Witness, which is significant dollars, over $50,000. But I've noticed in the paper it's starting to get smaller and smaller. We don't want the focus out in the community to go away. So we're going to put some more information out, just reminding the public that this is an ongoing investigation. Take a look at certain things in your area, and if there's just something that's not right, seems like a possible tip, something we can use, let us know. So we'll be putting a little bit more information out there, and we ask the public to continue to be vigilant on that. And then I'd also say, I want to say about our community, and you talked about that a little bit earlier, is working with the victims, the Fains in this in this particular case, and those couple hundred tradesmen who lost a lot of equipment, lost their jobs. That's a big impact to families and big impact to people. But what I found with the Fains in particular, when I would talk to them, they were always like, how are you guys doing? What do you need? How's it going? And I just would listen to that thinking, you guys just had millions of dollars burnt down on the ground, and you're worried about us, and you're worried about the firefighters. Yeah. I think that speaks so much to them. But also, the community is really rallied around those folks, police and fire. And not to use an old adage, but really when something happens like this, it makes people stronger. And I think Prescott Valley is going to be a lot stronger because of this. The Fains are going to be stronger. CAFMA, PD, we're all going to be stronger because it really brings us all together. And it makes me proud to be able to see that happen.
Yeah. And to this day, Ron and Brad continue to ask, hey, how's your folks?
Right.
How are things? And we're looking at them going, hey, we're good.
How are you guys?
How are you all doing?
Right.
Because if you go up for a meeting in the Fain offices and you look out the window, all you can see is the Legato site. It's a constant daily reminder. But the good thing is, and I've known Ron and Brad and the family for a long time, is that they're very strong people, and they're very resilient people, and they're not going to let this setback keep them from moving, helping to move the community forward.
Right.
And I was just in a meeting with Ron yesterday, and again, just such wonderful people to work with. And I echo what you said, that even when they showed up on scene that morning, how's everybody? Are there any injuries? Not asking about the building, which was kind of clear what was happening, but a lot of folks would come in and say, what happened? How did this start? They didn't say that. They came in and said, how are your people? Is anybody injured? And that shows a lot of care.
It does. And character.
Absolutely. And I had their phone numbers, so on the way to the fire, I was calling them, which is not what you want to wake up to if your Fain signature group is a message from the fire chief saying, hey, Legato's on fire, I need you to call me.
Yeah.
And yet they showed up on scene, they cared for other people, they rallied their folks, and then they stayed engaged with us throughout the entire process and remain engaged. So
I agree.
Thank you for bringing that up. They were fantastic. So Chief Ticer, thank you so much for coming in. Kathy, can we put any information like down here in the bottom of the box about who to contact for Silent Witness?
Yep. Yes, we can do that. We can put it in the description too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, if you can just add that into the description and wherever else, that way we have it.
Yeah, it'd be helpful.
Help kind of promote that.
That's great.
Chief Ticer, again, thanks for coming in. Kathy, thank you as always for being here. Not that you had much choice.
I did not.
No.
I did.
Part of your job.
Thank you so much, Chief Ticer, for coming in.
Thank you.
This is really cool.
Yeah.
All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe.